Good morning, good noon, good afternoon, and good evening as per your time zone. I am Abusalah Sakender, working as Assistant Professor of Jagannath University, Dhaka, Bangladesh. I would like to thank the organization committee for inviting me to present my paper at such kind of prestigious international conference. I hope you may know the title of my paper. However, I am happy to tell you again, my paper title is Education in Bangladesh and COVID-19 Pandemic, an analysis on government policies. Now I am presenting the main part of my presentation. On 8th March 2020, the first coronavirus patient was identified in Bangladesh. After a few days later, on 17th March 2020, the Bangladesh government suddenly shut down educational institutions across Bangladesh. It was the first time in Bangladesh educational institutions were closed nationwide for disease by the government circular. Since the beginning, the shutdown of educational institutions, students and teachers moved to safe areas. Mainly, many of them have returned to their homes. Still today, they are staying there and waiting to return campus for starting in-person academic activities again. It is almost more than 1.5 years since educational institutions of Bangladesh closed. However, after 27 days of shutting down on 12th April 2020, through a circular of the Directorate of Secondary and Higher Education, the Bangladesh government reopened academic activities for high school level students, but online. Soon after, other educational institutions such as public universities launched their online teaching and learning as well. Though since 2017, Bangladesh government claims Bangladesh is a digital country. However, online teaching and learning is the new method for Bangladeshi students and teachers, as are other South Asian countries. Therefore, Bangladeshi students and teachers have faced many problems such as adaptations of new methods, internet connections, shortage of electronic devices, managing funds for buying internet and class materials, etc. In these circumstances, the Bangladesh government takes necessary initiatives to solve the problems of e-learning. For example, offered credit to buy electronic devices, circulated e-learning guidelines, and so on. In this point, this article will investigate by analyzing primary and secondary sources the questions of what was the education policy taken by the Bangladesh government during this COVID-19 pandemic? Is it effective for teaching and learning? What is the long-term impact on Bangladeshi education, how the Bangladeshi government overcomes this crisis. Many categories of Bangladeshi educational institutions are actively running across Bangladesh. Mainly, they are divided into 4 camps, which are government, MPO, private, and autonomous institutions based on funding and supervision. As an illustration, the Bangladesh government provides funds for public universities, but they cannot impose their rules frequently without passing a law in the parliament. The public university runs predominantly based on that policy was made by the university authority. However, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, all kinds of educational institutions are mainly functioning by following the same rules and policies that are circulated by the government nationwide. In this case, predominantly the Education Ministry of Bangladesh, in associate with the Prime Minister's office, is responsible for making policies for the education sector during this pandemic time. More precisely, the Ministry of Education is the central figure in the case of policy making perspective during this COVID-19 pandemic, because in most cases, the Ministry of Education is leading to take government policies nationwide. In this case, the Ministry of Education can be considered the eye of the Bangladesh government's education policy during the pandemic period. Therefore, this article analyzes policies that are taken under the leading of the Ministry of Education nationwide, or for groups of institutions at least. After investigating the Bangladesh government policy that has taken during this COVID-19 pandemic, this article divides those policies into 3 camps. Number 1, policy for the protection of students and teachers from COVID-19 infections. Number 2, policy for teaching learning. Number 3, policy for infrastructure development. For example, since the beginning, the Bangladesh government is very cordial to protect their students and teachers from COVID-19 infections. For this reason, they shut down the educational institutions before locking down the country. It is an example of the policy for the protection of students and teachers from COVID-19 infections. However, they concern about gaps in learning. For this reason, they launched online learning. It is an example of the policy for teaching learning. Additionally, the Bangladesh government provides funds for the renovation of students' hostels of public universities. It is an example of the policy for infrastructure development. In the above 3 policies, the Bangladesh government's prime concern is protecting students and teachers from COVID-19 infections. Therefore, the Bangladesh government takes their policy based on their prime concern, that is, protect students and teachers from the COVID-19 infection. For this reason, recently the Bangladesh government initiates a vaccination program for students and faculty before starting in-person classes again. After analyzing Bangladesh government steps or policies that have taken during this pandemic time, this article argues that the Bangladesh government incorporated problem-solving chain path policies to continue its teaching and learning processes during this COVID-19 pandemic. According to Zhang and Wang, in the problem-solving chain path, a decision maker usually gets the solution of the original problems through solving a series of sub-problems. In the Bangladesh case, the government solved the main problems of the education sector during the pandemic by solving a series of sub-problems. For instance, to protect students and faculty from infection by the COVID-19, the Bangladesh government shut down educational institutions. After that, the session jam question came as a sub-problems because the long-term shutdown will increase session jam. After that, the government launched e-learning. Now the new problem rose, which was e-learning devices problems. The government then allocated funds as credits for poor students to buy the e-learning device. This point shows that the Bangladesh government did not have any idealistic policies to overcome crisis of the education sector during the pandemic. They take their policy according to the need of circumstances. For this reason, their policies run like a chain. This example shows one of the main features of the problem-solving chain path policy, why this article argues that the Bangladesh government incorporates the problem-solving chain path policy to continue their academic activities during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it can be named the question solved chain policy because the government did not take policies before raising the question by the students and or faculty or civil society or mass media. While problems or questions rose one after another by the students and or faculty or civil society or mass media, therefore, soon after, the Bangladesh government initiated a new policy to solve the problems one by one. Similarly, still today, the government does not officially announce their post-pandemic policy, which is initially indeed needed to formulate. Without a well-furnished post-pandemic visionary education policy, it is impossible to recover gaps in learning and to restore academia as was before. After observing the Bangladesh government's present activities, this article noticed that the Bangladesh government is walking on the same road to the future, and therefore their pandemic time policy may apply to solve the post-pandemic problems of academia. Thanks for listening the brief presentation of my article. Bye.